Hi guys, today I'm going to give you my labor and delivery story for our baby Calvin. It's been almost 2 months now since he was born, and I really should have filmed this earlier, but I just kept putting it off and I don't know when I'm gonna be able to edit it. I don't know if it's gonna be soon that you guys are even gonna see this, or if it's gonna be a little while. I'm 7 weeks postpartum. Calvin is 7 weeks old today that I'm filming this. So I feel like this video might be a little bit rambly for one. I hope it's not too long, and I hope that I get my facts correct. I wrote down some stuff. I took notes in my phone. My husband and I both wrote down at times what was going on at what time during the labor and everything. So I have notes and I have my memory, but for some reason it really has been fading. It really feels like so long ago. It's really hard to reimagine that day and everything. So anyway, I hope that this video is going to be somewhat entertaining for you, or at least informative. I know that in the week leading up to my delivery of Calvin, I was definitely watching tons of videos like these. It was definitely really helpful to see everybody's stories, because it really is, every single labor and delivery is totally different. Anyway, I am going to stop rambling for now and let's hop into this. And I don't really know where to begin. I guess I'll tell you guys, as you know, if you've been watching my videos for a while, if you've been following me here on this channel, you know that I was in the hospital for 5 weeks before Calvin was born. On April 23rd, I was 32 weeks and 1 day pregnant, and I woke up in the morning and I felt a gush of water. And it was probably maybe only like a half a cup or a cup of actual fluid. It wasn't like a ton, not like all my water was gone, but it was a significant gush, and I knew something was wrong. So anyway, went into the hospital with all that and everything at 32 weeks. I was so terrified that I was going to have to deliver then, because at our, what is it called? At the prenatal classes that we took at the hospital, she said once your water breaks, you have like 24 or 48 hours in order to get baby out from there. And I was like, we cannot have a 32-week baby. That was like the most terrifying thing ever to even think about that. But when I got to the hospital, they explained to me that they were going to wait till 34 weeks to induce me if I could make it that long. And then even after that, when I got my new doctor, he said he wanted to make it as long as possible. So thank God, seriously, thank God for the doctor that I ended up having, because we made it to full term. We made it to 37 weeks exactly, and he induced me, and that's when we had Calvin. So thank goodness that we were able to make it to full term instead of having baby so early. So anyway, Calvin was born on May 27th at 1:26 p.m. and he weighed 8 pounds and 6 ounces and was 21 inches long. So even being a 37-week baby, he was still a big baby, you know, a good sized baby, even for coming a couple weeks early. So that was awesome. That was really great that he was able to gain so much weight and be such a big healthy baby. He was totally fine when he was born. Everything was really great. It was just, things couldn't have worked out better as far as the circumstances that we started with at 32 weeks to how we got our baby home. I mean, everything just went great in that time frame. But he was born via C-section after I pushed for a couple of hours. So let's start there. On the night of the 26th, I was induced at 5 p.m. I think. Yeah, okay, so according to my notes here, I was moved to my room, moved to the labor room at 4 o'clock, and at 5 o'clock is when they finally induced me and everything, gave me all the drugs and whatnot. I will say, at 32 weeks when I came to the hospital, I got an IV in my hand, and that wasn't bad at all. It didn't hurt, was totally fine, not a terrifying experience. But then when I went in to get my IV for actually delivering the baby, that hurt like a whole lot more than the one that I got on April 23rd. So just wanted to put that in there. I had my very first cervix check at 4:15 as soon as I got into the room, before they even started anything, and I was already 1.5 centimeters, and she said very thin, and Calvin was very low. That first cervix check was not bad at all. Didn't hurt, didn't feel weird, was not any different than any other exam you would have going to your regular OB. I didn't think that that was bad at all, but the following ones later on in the night kind of started to hurt. So like I said, I was moved into the room at 4 o'clock. We knew we were going to be in the afternoon. Did I mention that? It was the night of the 26th, the evening of the 26th. And my husband, Justin, got off work a little bit early and went out to our house because he works down in the city and we live not in the city. We live in like the middle of freaking nowhere, like an hour drive from the city. And the hospital's almost like not quite a halfway point, a little closer to the city than from our house. But so he left work, passed the hospital, went home, got some stuff and everything, then came back to the hospital. So he knew I was being induced that evening. Our doctor had talked about inducing me around 8 o'clock that night, but I think that day everyone had decided we were gonna do it a little bit early because why not? So they started inducing me at like 5 o'clock instead. So it was a little bit earlier than Justin had anticipated. So Justin didn't get there until after, were they already putting the IV in my hand? I think Justin was there when the nurse was putting in my IV, so I think I got to the room and then he arrived and then they started doing everything, so they at least waited for him to come, but I had been moved to my new room before Justin was there. And they started me on Pitocin because I was being induced. I did not go into labor naturally. For the 5 weeks that I had been at the hospital, they had me on monitors morning, and at first, like in the morning I would go for an hour, and then in the evening sometime I'd go for an hour. And I was always having contractions, but I never felt anything at all. Like maybe once or twice ever I felt a little bit crampy, but it was never anything. I hardly even felt, the only way I knew I was having contractions is if I was watching the thing or if I was feeling my belly. Like I could feel my belly get really hard, but other times like it would say I wasn't having a contraction, but my belly was still really hard. So I never really felt these contractions that they kept telling me that I was having pretty regularly for those 5 weeks. So they started me on Pitocin and they had me going in like intervals of 2 units, however they measured those. So I was going like 2 units of Pitocin, 4, 6, 8. At 4 and 6, I didn't feel any different than I had before, but once I got to 8, I was kind of starting to feel them, and I have written down here, it says, I felt like pressure, like Calvin was pushing down, not crampy or stomach pains, a little bit of a backache feeling, but not a crampy kind of what I thought contractions were going to feel like. It was more just like I felt him pushing down, like I could feel the pressure down there. So we started getting induced at 5 o'clock. At 9:40, the doctor came in and he broke my water, and that felt just like what I thought it would feel like because I had been leaking fluid for 5 weeks now, so I knew kind of what that felt like, but I thought it was gonna be like a huge gush, like so much water, but it really didn't feel as intense as I thought it was going to be. It was just kind of what I figured it would feel like. It was really warm, but nothing crazy, nothing like a huge waterfall or anything like that. But as the doctor was like reaching in there to break my water, that was really kind of intense. That was a lot of pressure. It felt like he was like had all of his hands up in there, and it felt really uncomfortable as he was actually doing it. So after having my water broken, the contractions definitely started to pick up from there. I could actually feel some stuff going on at that point. I was just kind of taking notes as I was in labor, and I have written down at 10 o'clock, I said, contractions are not as pronounced as I thought they would be. Like how they always say, like, you know, you can time your contraction the beginning of this one to the beginning of the next one. I wasn't feeling that. Mine just felt like they were running all into one another. And it felt like they were kind of changing too. I have written down at first, like as soon as they broke my water, they felt really intense and felt like they were back to back to back to back. Then after like 10-15 minutes, they were not being that consistent and they were kind of just doing whatever they wanted. I wrote down, it felt like my hips were being intensely spread apart. And my sister asked me what it felt like, what they felt like. And that's really what I felt. I felt like my hips were being squished together and then like ripped apart. Like it just felt like so much pressure in my hip region. So my contractions were being weird. They would come, it almost looked like on the monitor, like it would be like 3 contractions and then a little bit of nothing, and they'd all be right together. 3 contractions all right together and then a little bit of nothing. And they were calling this a dysfunctional contraction pattern is what I have written down. I think that's what they were calling it. Dysfunctional was definitely in the title of what they were calling it. So this was not working in our favor as things started to roll down the line. By about 11:30, I was starting to feel shaky at times, and at 12:30, I decided it was time for the epidural. I had always planned to have an epidural. that wasn't like a big decision. I was definitely going to have an epidural, but I waited until 12:30 to get it. And honestly, Justin slept through everything. So it's at night. It's 12:30 in the morning, you know, a little after midnight. Justin had been sleeping since probably, I don't know, 8 or 9 o'clock. You know, that's usually about when we fall asleep. But yeah, so I was sitting there actually feeling the contractions and going through a little bit of labor as Justin was napping on the little couch bed thing right next to me. But he did wake up for the epidural, and that was gross. I gotta be honest. A lot of people say that it's not a big deal, but I did not like that at all. Like, oh man, you could definitely feel, well, it just felt so weird. Like, you could feel the, like, string, you know, like the little tubey thing, and like, it was definitely gross, man. That was really sucky. The epidural was really sucky. I did kind of jump a little bit when she first stabbed me with it, and it was gross. I can't even explain to you how strange it was, because was it like, I think it was something like, you know, like she'd poke to one side and all of this side would be numb, and then she'd poke to the other side and all of this side would be numb. You could definitely feel that, and it was very, very strange. I mean, thank goodness for it. The contractions did suck, but the epidural actually sucked too, you know, like that was very weird. That was a strange situation, not gonna lie. I wish I had written down what it felt like. I don't have any notes on what the epidural felt like, but it was definitely weird. So at 1 o'clock in the morning, they checked me again, and I was 3 centimeters, 90% effaced, and they put in my catheter. And that was kind of sucky, you know. I was only at 3 centimeters. They didn't check me before they gave me the epidural. I just said I wanted to have the epidural. My doctor was definitely like, whenever you want it, you can have it. I don't care where you're at. So it's like the middle of the night. I get to have some rest because I've had my epidural, but the nurse keeps coming in every half an hour or hour and moving me around and messing with me. So it's not like I got like real rest because she was like in there bugging me all the time. I mean, I understand why they gotta come in there and bug you all the time, make sure you're not dying and whatnot, but it was just, it was still kind of sucky. I really didn't get a lot of sleep or anything like that. Okay, these all have question marks by them because I really don't know what time it was. It has 4 o'clock in the morning, question mark, and it says I was 4 to 5 centimeters, 100% effaced, -1 station at 4 o'clock in the morning. At 5 o'clock in the morning, I was at 6 or 7 with a contraction. That's how she described it. At 0 station, and I was up to 12 units of Pitocin at 5 o'clock. At 8:40, I was checked again, and I was 9 centimeters. So that was pretty exciting. And then at 9:15, I was at 10 centimeters. They told me I was going to labor down for 1 hour, and I was at +1 station. So I was like really excited. 9:15 in the morning, I was like, we're gonna have a baby before noon. We're gonna have like a 10:30 baby. That's when the baby's gonna come. And that's totally not what happened at all. So when I got to 10 centimeters, I think that's about when Justin called everybody and told them. I'm sure some of them were already on the way. Like our close family, like my parents, his parents, you know, like my sisters and stuff like that. That's when everybody knew, and that's when everybody figured baby would be here relatively soon, right? So it's 9:15 in the morning. I'm gonna start pushing around 10 o'clock. So at 10:15, we did start pushing. We were still pushing by noon. And at 1 o'clock, they decided it was time to have a C-section. And that was really sucky. As I was pushing, I felt like the first hour of pushing, I felt like I had no idea what I was doing. I felt like nothing was happening, like we were making no progress. I couldn't really feel anything. We'd have to watch the monitor to make sure when my contractions were coming, because I really wasn't feeling anything. But the second hour, I started to feel like my whole pregnancy, Calvin's little feet or whatever, something was all up here, like right up under my ribcage, right up under my boob right there on my right hand side, and I would feel pressure right there, and I felt like maybe that was what the contractions were. Like that's the little bit that I got as like a hint that the contraction was coming, but really I didn't feel much of anything. So like I said, the first hour of pushing, I felt like I was doing nothing. I really didn't know what was going on. I didn't really feel like I knew what I was doing, but we made a little bit of progress, I think, in that first hour. And then the second hour, I felt like I was kind of getting the hang of pushing a little bit more, and I felt like I could feel him better. I felt like I could feel his head coming down as I was pushing. I felt like I could just feel things more in that second hour, and I felt like I knew what I was doing a little bit more in that second hour after having an hour of, you know, like practicing and whatnot. But the nurse told me that we were not making any progress in that second hour. And at this point, I was not tired. I wasn't like, oh my gosh, I can't do this anymore. I never got to that point. I never felt like I was so exhausted that I couldn't keep going. But I feel like they just told me we're gonna have a C-section. It wasn't a discussion. We were just going to have a C-section. And it's not like it was an emergency or anything. It's not like Cal was in distress or anything. I mean, he was doing fine. They just decided that was enough pushing and it was time to go and have a C-section. And I was extremely upset by that. Like, I know I cried and it makes me emotional just thinking about it because I so did not want to have a C-section, like, at all. Like, that was really sucky, and it felt so sucky that they were just like, that's what we're gonna do. It's not up for discussion. And I just felt like totally helpless in that situation. So back to all the people in the waiting room. They all showed up around, I don't know, 10:30 or something, because that's when we were going to start pushing, and it's 1 o'clock now and they're still out there waiting. And I'm not gonna lie, that was always something in my mind. I didn't want everyone to be there when Cal was born because I feared something like that was going to happen. But at the same time, I wanted everyone to be there when he came too, so that was kind of a tough decision because we knew that Cal was going to have to be in the NICU for 2 days to have IV antibiotics, just because my membranes had been ruptured for so long that the possibility of like infection and stuff like that was higher, and so they wanted to have antibiotics just as like a precaution. And so we knew that he was going to have to go to the NICU. We just didn't know how soon. You know, would they immediately take him from us, or would we have a little bit of time to hang out with him? And so I did want everybody to be there so that they could actually see him and not have to go see him in the NICU. But at the same time, I felt like everyone was waiting on us, and that was a sucky feeling too. So I feel like I've covered all of that stuff at the moment, and we can move on to the C-section. They came in, the anesthesiologist came in, and oh, I do want to talk a little bit more about that. When she gave me the epidural, she let me lie down on my side instead of like lean over. That was nice. I'm very glad that I was able to do that because I really didn't want to have to hunch over. I don't know, laying on my side made me feel like I was going to be a little bit safer. So she had me lay on my side and she did the epidural and everything. Anyway, when she came in, we were gonna have the C-section, she came in and gave me like an extra super dose of the epidural drugs and whatnot, and that was really weird because like everything was so numb. Justin had to change into the scrubby looking stuff. They wheeled me off down to the operating room or whatever, and he was not with me until a few minutes in. I think they were kind of like setting things up and whatnot, and then he got to come in, I think. It's really hard to remember. It really is hard to remember. I know that I guess they were poking me or pinching me or whatever on my belly or wherever, asking me if I felt anything, and I didn't feel anything. That was very weird because it's very strange to have half of your body not be able to feel anything. So they have the curtain thing up and I can't see anything and whatnot, and Justin's sitting up here by my head. They have my arms like out. They want me to have my arms straight out on these arm holding straight out table area, which was kind of weird. They strapped down my legs, which is kind of weird. I think they said my legs, like my hips were, like, I guess he was so low down in my pelvis that my hips wouldn't let my legs turn in, so they had to like squish my legs to lay flat because they like wouldn't move the way that they should move, I guess. After the C-section, I was told that he was so low down in my pelvis that it was really difficult for them to get him up out of me. During the C-section, it was a lot of pressure and a lot of tugging, and just like, you could just feel like all kinds of tugging. Like, it must have been really gross and weird because I could feel a lot of pressure. It didn't hurt at all. I mean, and it didn't even freak me out as much as I thought it would. Like, I always said, if I have to have a C-section, I want to be knocked out because I don't want to have to think about them messing with my stuff while I'm still awake. But it actually wasn't that bad. Not terrible at all. And I did get super duper shaky. I was like so shaky pretty much the whole stinking time, and a lot afterwards, and I think even the day afterwards I woke up and was super duper shaky. That was creepy. That was really weird. I felt like I was gonna die. I was like, why am I so shaky? Like, uncontrollable shakiness during the actual procedure. So we were wheeled down there at 1 o'clock, and at 1:26 is when Calvin was born, and then it took forever for them to put me back together. I don't have any notes here, but I feel like it was like a long time before we got to go back to our room. I don't know exactly what time it was. I could probably ask my sister and my mom when they actually got to see Calvin, but it to actually get him out was not very long, and then all the putting me back together part was pretty long. So when they pulled Cal out, the doctor came around the corner of the little, you know, curtain or whatever and showed us Cal, and he did have the cone-shaped head from being stuck down in my pelvis, and he was covered in a lot of vernix. He was definitely very, very white when he came out. He wasn't screaming at the top of his lungs or anything. He had like a really pathetic kind of cry, I think. It wasn't really anything intense or crazy, but he was crying when he came out eventually, I think. So Justin did stay up there by my head for a little while before he went to go see Calvin, and I could see them right over there as they were, you know, like cleaning him off and doing whatever kind of baby measuring and checking and stuff that they do, and Justin was over there with him. And I know it was forever that I was still in that room before I got to leave, but it didn't feel like forever. I know it was a long time, but it really in the moment didn't feel like a long time. I really don't know what else to say. We did have one of the nurses, was she a nurse, or I think she was a nurse or something, and she went around, took our camera and went around and took pictures of everything, and I'm so grateful and thankful for that, because we got a lot of really nice shots that she took for us in the surgery room. And she did take a picture of Cal coming up out of my belly, and I thought it was gonna be super duper gross, but actually not that gross, but it was kind of cool to see. So we did finally get to go back to the room. I remember my mom was feeding me ice chips and Cal was being passed around to everybody. The nurse did say that we would have an hour or so before they'd take him off to the NICU, and she suggested that we keep him. I would just lay with him skin to skin, and we would just, me, him, and Justin would all just have that 1 hour and not have our family in and everything. But I felt like after everybody waited for a million years to come see Calvin, I felt like everybody needed to come in and see Calvin. I didn't want to, you know, deprive them of seeing him after so long of a wait. So we stayed with Calvin for a little bit. I don't know exactly how long it was, and then Justin went out and got everybody and brought everybody in, and Calvin was all passed around everybody. And I don't think we even tried to nurse. I don't know if we did or not. I can't really remember. And as you guys know, if you've been watching my videos, me and Cal have had quite a bit of a struggle with nursing, and I wonder if that kind of has, you know, plays a role in that. The fact that we didn't lay skin to skin for an hour, and we didn't try to nurse as soon as he was born because they took him off to the NICU. So I wonder if that kind of plays a role in it too. But yeah, everybody was there. Everybody was super happy to see him and super excited to see him, and they did take him away, but I got to go down. They wheeled me down there to see him. They wheeled my whole situation down to the NICU so I could see him and hold him and whatnot. And I don't want to get all emotional with you, but I did honestly feel kind of disconnected from him for those couple of days. I don't think I even kissed him until like the second day that he was out here. Because that first day, on Friday, the day that we had him, they wheeled me down to the NICU to see him. The next day, I think Justin took me in a wheelchair, and then the next day I walked down there myself, I think. And on that day that I walked down there myself was the first day that I actually gave him a kiss. Because it was kind of like a strange situation. I was in the hospital forever. I finally had my baby, and then I'm just recovering all on my own, and he's not there with us. But the recovery from the C-section was really sucky, and looking back, it was kind of fortunate that he wasn't there with us for those 48 hours, 2 days, because the recovery from the C-section was really, really sucky. I know I just like repeated that whole sentence backwards and forwards, but I was able to recover with just me and Justin and not have to worry about taking care of a newborn in those couple of days. So I guess that was kind of a good thing, you know, that he wasn't there. I wasn't having to try to nurse him and feed him and everything, but I did have to pump for him, so I had to get up and sit up and pump on the machine and everything to give him like the colostrum and everything. That was pretty sucky. I mean, the recovery from the C-section was really, really sucky. And even after we came home on Monday evening, Monday afternoon. We had him on the Friday. We came home Monday of Memorial Day weekend. We spent the holiday weekend in the hospital. But on Monday when we came home, even for a couple days just sitting up out of bed to get him and stuff, that was really sucky too. So the recovery from the C-section really was super duper sucky. That's just how it is. I hope this was entertaining or helpful in some way to you. Like I said, the days leading up to the delivery of Calvin, I definitely was watching these kind of videos like crazy. I just loved hearing other people's stories because I'm a first-time mom. This is my first baby, you know, my first experience with this, and I had no idea what I was getting myself into. So I do hope you guys like this video. If you ever want to see lots of pictures of Calvin and whatnot, you can check out my Instagram. I always have links down below to all that social media stuff if you are interested. Let me know if there's any other kinds of baby related stuff or whatever you guys want to see. Any questions about anything that I left out. I'm sure I left lots of stuff out. Just ask me down below. But I will see you guys next time. Bye!